And by the way, that was in, what year was that? I just want to make sure I've got my facts correct. So altogether, Obama and the Export-Import Bank, they've given Mexico, I believe, $2 billion in loans for oil, to drill oil, even oil in the Gulf. And on top of that, we've even given money in the form of $2 billion to Brazil's state-owned oil company. So this is easy money on the cheap to these particular companies so they can drill there. In the meantime, Barack Obama's coming out saying we're not going to drill on federal lands here. We're going to shut down the pipeline. Again, it's just another case in point where a rational individual has to step back, at least for a moment, and say, what team is this guy on? What team is he on? Okay, Pat's got a good point. Pat, I'm out here in California. You're checking in from WABC. We need water out here. How about a pipeline of another sort? Pat, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, I'm over here in Connecticut. You know, with Obama sabotaging the oil pipeline, you've heard Governor Brown complaining for the past year about California not having any water. Mm-hmm. Well, is there any particular reason why they can't build a water pipeline from any number of the Great Lakes to California to supply the California residents with water?
I would love it. And Pat, I'll tell you why. It's because of the environmentalists. They want to return California back to nature. That's plain and simple. That's what they want to do. But I appreciate your call on this, the Savage Nation. Speaking of the governor out here in the state of California, Governor Moonbeam, as a lot of people like to refer to him. I'm not sure what Savage's nickname is for Governor Brown, but I'm sure he's got one. The bottom line is this guy's been caught in a big piece of hypocrisy. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Get your calls as well. MichaelSavage.com, the book Government Zero. Brian Sussman filling in on this, the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICO.
Brian Sussman filling in for Michael Savage on this, the Savage Nation. Love hearing from you. And, of course, the phone number is 855-400-7282. And the book Government Zero, which we've been talking about, only because it fits so well into the day's news. Folks, we don't have a government doing its job protecting our borders and ensuring that we speak a language that is in keeping with the American ethos and maintaining a culture that has to do with that very same ethos, which has produced great blessing for the world. But we've got a guy in the White House that doesn't see it that way. And so he's doing things like not fighting ISIS, bringing in a lot of people who have no inclination to ever assimilate into our society. And on top of that, and by the way, a lot of you right off the bat say, oh my God, he's a racist. No. I'm just talking about America. We are a nation of immigrants. There are ways to do this legally, lawfully, and intentionally, but apparently he doesn't care about any of that. That's more than an opinion. Just look at the facts. But on top of that, we also have a situation where we've got so much hypocrisy in the name of green and others. I've got the greenest governor in the United States. His name is Jerry Brown. We have such ridiculous plans in place. I think now it's 30% of our energy has to be produced from renewables. And, of course, the renewables cost a lot more. That's why we have the highest energy prices in the country here in California. And who's pushing for the solar and who's pushing for the wind? Well, the investors in solar, the investors in wind, as well as the natural gas companies, because wherever you have a solar installation or wherever you have a wind installation, you have to have a natural gas backup. And the people, by the way, who don't like these things are generally speaking environmentalists themselves, but they are paid off and they keep quiet. We've got this huge solar panel facility down in the Mojave Desert. How they were able to get that one through, I have no idea, because the area where they put this gigantic installation is a place where there are endangered lizards and endangered tortoises. And prior to them installing this solar field, which is huge, people couldn't even walk there. But they installed it anyway. Dianne Feinstein gave them the go-ahead. I'm sure there were some payoffs somewhere behind the scenes. These guys got government grants, low-interest loans from the government. Hey, listen, any investor, and some of you are business people, you know what I'm talking about. It's always better to use other people's money, right? Especially when the other people's money is cheap. So these investors got cheap government money and government grants to build this thing, and they built it. And it's one of the biggest polluters in California. You're saying, how could it be a big polluter? It's a solar field. Well, guess what? It's all hooked up to deliver solar in the day, but at night, there ain't no sunshine. It needs a natural gas backup. Guess what? On cloudy days, it needs a natural gas backup. They did the math. This thing's putting out a lot of CO2. More than most power plants. But on top of that, what's happening is it's so massive. Birds. I'm guessing probably even a few endangered condors because they live in that part of our state. These big, massive birds that look like they're from the dinosaur era. And the birds fly across this solar field, and it's so hot that they don't have a chance to get out. It's like they're flying. It's getting hot. I better turn around. They fry midair. They're literally being burned to a crisp. Nobody cares. The greenies pay off the environmentalists. It's all good. Brian Sussman filling in on this, The Savage Nation. Government Zero. We're going to talk a little bit more about this book. Number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list, michaelsavage.com. And your calls just ahead on this, The Savage Nation. Brian Sussman on this, The Savage Nation. There is no time to lose, my friends. The progressive Islamist agenda has advanced into every part of America. From the White House to your local public school. And if we are to survive, this has to be stopped. Get Savage's book, Government Zero, available now. michaelsavage.com, Amazon, buy the book. Oh, let's just go back into something. If you're just joining us, thank you so much. I always loved speaking to this audience. It's a treat to talk to people all over the country. And I come to you from KSFO in San Francisco, Michael's flagship station. We were talking about this story. I don't know how much about this you've heard, because you're all over the United States. How much about this have you heard? This was a kid named Faisal Mohammed. The authorities were very slow to release the name because, you know, there might be some Islamophobes out there who get really carried away. It's amazing. All these attacks that have taken place on our homeland from people cut from pretty much the same cloth. Can we agree on that? I am being an observer right now. Pretty much cut from the same cloth in terms of their age and they're men a certain age and they believe in a certain religion. Okay, can we agree on that without sounding crazy? And yet, every time something like this happens, the first thing we're told, nope, no terrorism, don't go there, don't call it terrorism. We're not allowed to use our brain. See, this is Government Zero. Don't use your brain. Think the way we would like you to think. So here's this sheriff. You got this kid on a campus, on a University of California campus, goes nuts. He starts trying to kill people just like they're showing you how to kill people in these videos coming out of the Palestinian territories. Take a knife, take a few swipes at people, and if you die in the process, hey, you get to go see Allah. That's what he was doing, exactly what they described to do, except he also had handcuffs and he had night vision goggles and he had all sorts of other stuff. I don't know what he was planning on doing. He had a manifesto. They won't release the manifesto. They do admit in the manifesto he says Allah, but you know, hey, listen, I mean, if he were a Christian kid, he'd probably be mentioning Jesus. Or if he were, I don't know, you pick the religion, he'd probably mention that God as well. So the fact that he's a young, nice Muslim kid doing something silly, sure, he's going to mention Allah, but don't think anything of that. Silly. The guy... you're going to hear the sheriff of Merced County actually saying that this kid was going to do something silly with a knife. He's trying to kill people, including a cop, by the way, before he got shot dead. Clip 7, please.
There was a few references to Allah, and I wanted to tell everybody, as me being a Christian, it would be like me referencing the Lord Jesus. If I'm going to go do something silly, it doesn't mean that I'm anything other than I've got a belief in a higher power, and his belief is in...
This madness has got to end. Okay, so let's go to Mike, WMAL, nation's capital. Mike, go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation. Go right ahead. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you, Brian. You're doing an excellent job.
Thank you. Trying my hardest.
What I want to point out is something that's very near and dear to me here in the state of Virginia. We have the Sons of the Confederacy. Their license plate has been declared illegal by our liberal governor because it has a rebel flag on it. And they are not allowed to get another license plate unless they turn in the old license plate because it has the rebel flag on it. Because this is a sign of prejudice now. Because of what one person did down south, who shot people up. He didn't say for the glory of the South. He wasn't waving the flag, but because he owned a rebel flag, somehow that makes everybody who owns a rebel flag a racist. Now we got Faisal, who makes several references with his manifesto toward Allah, and we're told this has nothing to do with Islam. The news media and certain agencies, the law enforcement agencies, which are now bowing and scraping to Obama and his boys, are making our country a joke and making us weaker and more vulnerable by the day. And when they
Mike, you're spot on, buddy. You're spot on. You are spot on. Now, thank you for your call. I was watching a football game this week, and I really enjoy. I don't like watching the NFL so much anymore because it seems like when I watch the NFL, I'm watching a bunch of gangsters. Not all of them, but too many of them. A bunch of gangsters with money, gaining applause for their God-given athletic abilities. So I like to watch college football. I'm watching Ole Miss play, the Ole Miss Rebels, and I'm thinking, how long is it going to be? Maybe some of you people in Mississippi can help me out. How long is it going to be before the federal government demands that the Ole Miss Rebels change their name? What is happening? We're just, before our very eyes, it's becoming more like Animal Farm or Brave New World. And then you've got guys like the governor of my state. I started to get into Jerry Brown a moment ago, and I got sidetracked, something that oftentimes happens with me. But Fernando is calling from California. And, Fernando, let's inform the rest of the country what's going on with our governor. The green governor, Jerry Brown, owns a very large ranch. And what did he do with state resources on his ranch, Fernando? Go ahead and tell the United States.
Oh, yeah. So he uses state resources, satellite imagery, topography, surveying to see if his private ranch might not have some green, not so green oil.
Yeah, green oil. Literally, folks, what Fernando is telling you is true. Our governor, Jerry Brown, was using state resources to determine if there was oil and natural gas on his property. Talk about hypocrisy, right, Fernando?
Oh, of course. And then they laugh about capitalism when it's really, the word is crony capitalism, but I call it crackhead communism, and the crack is greenbacks. Okay, so they're not proletariats, they're bourgeois files to clear the air. So whenever they talk about green, it's the opposite. When they talk about this, it's always the opposite.
Hey, Fernando, thanks for your call this on this Savage Nation program today. Here's the deal in California. State law prohibits elected officials from using public resources, just like Jerry Brown did, for personal purposes, regardless of the motivation. He was using state workers here in the state of California to survey his property, even do satellite imagery over his property. They were essentially acting as his own private oil prospecting team. Now, what's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. Oh, you'll get a story in the Associated Press. It'll be carried on, the San Francisco Chronicle and the LA Times website. LA Times may do something with it, but it's just going to be a little slap on the wrist to Jerry, and he can move about his business. That's all. No big deal. Then we've got this cockamamie. I got to tell you about this. We got this cockamamie high-speed rail plan in California. Maybe they're planning the same sort of nonsense where you live. But they wanted to